In the Clone Wars Season 7 finale, remember when Jesse was under the influence of Order 66, and Ahsoka and Rex were across from him and the rest of his boys, trying to convince him that something was wrong? I think Rex would have been able to convince Jesse had Ahsoka not been there. Now, this is all a bit funny and to theorize on, since Ahsoka being on that ship is how Rex actually got his chip out. So we could say, for argument's sake, and this will lead into a bit of a cool fan fiction at the end of this video, what if she was in another room or had left the ship already without Rex, just to kind of help him convince the others because she knew something was crazy, that once they saw her, they were just trying to kill her. Her presence there gave them a target, whereas if she wasn't around, I feel they would maybe act like Hauser, who we still didn't know much about. But what we do know is that most likely there weren't any Jedi on Ryloth, which begs the question, what would have happened if Order 66 is executed without any Jedi around? Now, that's going to be a video I'm going to make in a standalone, and I'm going to be explaining a lot of different things, but in short, nothing. They'd be kind of useless in terms of Palpatine's plans for terminating the Jedi. Now, there was one cool instance in the comics, in the canon comics, which I'm going to go over in that video, where the clones actually attacked Vader as well. So it doesn't just have to be Jedi, it has to be any Force user, any lightsaber wielding being. Now, I do wonder if they became more aggressive or not once Order 66 was executed. Either way, had Ahsoka not been there, the clones wouldn't have seen Rex as a traitor, and Jesse would have been able to see things a little more critically perhaps, just like Hauser was able to make his men see that the Empire is taking over in a dictatorial fashion, which is something that we got to see with the Bad Batch, which I really appreciate, because we see such a big transference between the Republic and the Empire. And we see not only how the Empire is changing the entire galaxy, just stormtroopers and this and that, but the actual response that the public, the citizens of the galaxy, are having towards this ironclad rule that the Empire is putting over everyone. Like having transponders put into your ship and having codes and so on and so forth just to travel. Now, the scene where Rex and Jesse are talking in Season 7 was really the first time that we saw a clone under the influence of Order 66 to be reasoned with, and actually have dialogue with one another. Up until that point, I thought clones under the influence of the inhibitor chip in Order 66 might just be clones, losing most of their personality traits along the way, and just following orders like robots. It seems like they're actually quite alive, and they're really all there mentally. They just have it in their heads, literally, that the Jedi have enacted treason, and now it's time to terminate them because they're the most evil things in the galaxy. In essence, the clones don't actually know what they're doing, and they don't really know that they're doing something wrong. They think this is as noble of a thing as protecting the ones that they care for. It's kind of like they're hypnotized. And what's sad is that they probably saw no difference between Jedi and Clankers once Order 66 was given. Now, had Rex changed Jesse's mind? Well, I believe the 501st crew would crash land on the ship on that planet and work together to find a way off. Now, they still may be trying to execute Order 66, but there weren't any Jedi around, so how could they really do that? They would just be amongst themselves. So maybe Rex could play it a little bit cool until he did get them on land, and then, I believe, assuming Ahsoka hid or was not around, Rex could trick them all into removing their chips by ordering them, since he was elite compared to them, ordering them for brain scans or something like that. And doing so, he would sedate them and then extract their chips one by one. This would have created an entire army of 501st clones to serve Ahsoka, who would then have a much better fighting chance against all odds of the Empire. Now remember, if they have their chips taken out, they're going to be loyal to her. They're going to be like, oh my god, what was I doing? I don't know what was happening to me. And then they're going to realize that the Empire had secretly put something in their heads to control them. And then they would revolt. And this could have been the start of the clone uprising. Let's say a batch of them then go to Kamino, inform all of their brothers, and then they get their chips removed, unknown to the actual Kaminoans. And then a bunch of clones tell each other and so on and so forth, and then before you know it, well, now all the clones around the galaxy are trying to abstain from Order 66 and trying to overthrow the Empire. This would only make the rebellion even bigger. And not to mention, it would have made Ahsoka extremely protected. The events could lead to a spin-off show where Ahsoka leads the 501st through the galaxy on missions, much like the Bad Batch taking random missions from Sid. Imagine the reaction the clones would have, along with Ahsoka, when they all found out that Anakin Skywalker had become Darth Vader. Probably most likely from putting 2 and 2 together, because most of the clones during Order 66 didn't even know that Vader was part of the Empire. Actually, all of them didn't know. No one knew. The only person that knew was Palpatine. So she might even just feel his presence like she did in Star Wars Rebels if she came across him. Now, I think if they all could have had their chips taken out, then everything, including the Mandalorian, would have changed. I mean, imagine Malachor and Rebels, the 501st. All old guys now, sure, but they're still very loyal to Ahsoka and they're better than stormtroopers. I mean, look what Rex, Gregor, and Cody did in Rebels. They could help her fight off Vader and the Inquisitors. They'd help her fight Lady Santo in The Mandalorian and infiltrate that village. They'd even help her fight Thrawn until they all die from their accelerated aging, which would be soon after Return of the Jedi, sadly, unless they find a way to decelerate their aging. Maybe even slow it down a lot more than just what's normal. Now, I think something that could be cool, even though this won't happen because it hasn't happened, is that Ahsoka could join the Bad Batch. And you know what? It still actually could happen in some sort of way. I mean, imagine if Hauser joined Ahsoka and his men who corroborated with him, who joined him in rebelling against the Empire. I mean, these are really some of the first rebels of the Empire. You know, not including Padme and everything that she was doing, especially in those deleted scenes of Revenge of the Sith, which really shows the first beginning of the rebellion. But this would be more in an official sense, I suppose. So I'd even like to see Ahsoka rolling with some of the 501st, rolling with some clones who had rebelled against the Empire now, even with their chips intact. So I'm wondering if she's actually able to convert some of them herself. But it might be a little bit dangerous considering she is a Jedi and that really triggers them. Now I wonder if that would apply to someone like Hauser, who seems to be a little more level-headed than everyone else. So I don't really know. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. But in essence, I just wanted to get the point across and do a little fan fiction today regarding if Ahsoka hadn't been around when Jesse was talking to Rex. Because we saw that they were actually having a decent dialogue, and Jesse was almost seeming like he was maybe going to understand what Rex was talking about and maybe going to join him and stop being such a butthead. But at the end of the day, he was controlled by the inhibitor chip, and that was the design of it. And this is Star Wars, so it probably was targeting some very perfect, meticulous point in his brain that allowed him to retain his true self and his characteristics and his personality, but to at the same time alter his cognition in the sense that he believes this story that the Jedi are now fully enacting treason against the Empire. So I guess there was no way that Ahsoka could have been around and they would have been okay with even reasoning with or even trying to be open to the ideas that Rex was perpetrating. But I think if she wasn't, then it could have gone the way I explained in the fan fiction here. So let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next episode of Star Wars Theory. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.